We beseech thee so to direct the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless us, our sovereign King Charles III, William, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the governor of our islands, the premier, the speaker of the parliament, the leader of the opposition, of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Just before the benediction, I'd just like to say on behalf of myself that we sympathize truly with the royal family at this time. We pay respect to our late queen because she has laid us well in these parts of the island. We do have high appreciation for all of her memories. The benediction. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. The House has now resumed.
Proclamation summoning a first meeting of the 2022-2023 session.
Cayman Islands Proclamation number 4 of 2022 by His Excellency Martin Roper, Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Governor of the Cayman Islands. Whereas Section 83(1) of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands provides that the session of the Parliament of the Cayman Islands shall be held at such places and begin at such times as the Governor may from time to time by proclamation appoint. Now therefore I, Martin Roper, OBE, Governor of the Cayman Islands, by virtue of the powers conferred upon me by Section 83(1) of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands, hereby proclaim that a session of the Parliament of the Cayman Islands shall begin and be held at the House of Parliament, Georgetown, Grand Cayman, at 3 p.m. on the 12th day of September 2022, and shall thereafter continue until such date and time as the Parliament may adjourn thereto. Given under my hand and the public seal of the Cayman Islands at Georgetown and the island of Grand Cayman, this 12th day of September, in the year of our Lord 2022, in the first year of the reign of His Majesty King Charles III.
Reading by the Honorable Speaker of Messages and Announcements.
Have notice of an avoidable absence of Mr. White, Georgetown West, Mr. Hugh, Georgetown North. It's a possibility that Mr. White could get here in time before we adjourn. Sincere and genuine feelings for the late Her Majesty the Queen, and extend our sympathies to the royal family. As a matter of protocol, let me firstly welcome all former speakers, former members of Parliament and clerks, the visiting ministers who we are privileged to have with us from our region, other dignitaries and other officials to this, the hallowed chambers of the House of Parliament, for this very special meeting for the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. We are pleased that you were able to join us for this memorable and unforgettable occasion. It is most notable that during her reign, this very House transitioned from being a bicameral legislative assembly of justices and vestrymen to being a legislative assembly in 1959, and finally, 2 years ago, to become a parliament. As a housekeeping matter, we will try to have each member's tribute delivered as quickly as possible due to the other previously arranged events. We are mindful of the time constraints, and as a result, members will be expected to rise without undue delay to offer their sentiments and condolences. So we will be able to proceed and therefore attend our scheduled functions and meetings. Before we formally start our tributes, we shall stand for a minute of silence in reverence and to show our respect for the late Queen. Let us all rise. To have with us honorable ministers from the region, ministers of tourism and other responsibilities, the Honorable Hayden Hughes, Minister of Infrastructure, Communications, Utilities, Housing and Tourism, Anguilla, Honorable Charles Max Fernandez, Minister of Tourism and Investment, Antigua, Senator the Honorable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Tourism and International Transport, Barbados, Honorable Anthony Mailer, Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, Belize, Honorable Abner Perez, Minister of Blue Economy and Civil Aviation, Belize, the Honorable Puisando Sinche, Minister of Economic Development, Curacao, Honorable Denise Charles, Minister of Tourism, International Transport, and Maritime Initiatives, Dominica. The Honorable Lennox Andrews, Minister of Economic Development, Planning, Tourism, ICT, Creative Economy, Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives, Grenada. Mr. Alexander Benatour, he is the Deputy Commissioner for the Martinique Tourism Authority, Martinique. The Honorable Dr. Ernest Allaire, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information, St. Lucia. Councillor Tasha Burris, Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation, Tobago. Honorable Josephine Connolly, Minister of Tourism, the Turks and Caicos Islands. We are very pleased that they could be with us. We do know there are others that will be here, and they will be welcome, of course, during their time in their respective conference. Colleagues, it is with heartfelt and somber mood that I rise to render tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. We have all seen over the past days that her passing has caused great gloom to many who have known or met her. The grief is unbelievable, unbearable at this time, but her passing also brings extraordinary solidarity across nations as we feel collectively a sense of loss and deep sadness. Her departure has left an unquestionable void. It is at this juncture that we more fully value what she represented and stood for. She has left a remarkable spirit of reconciliation and harmony that at this time is felt with particular poignancy. Historically, when the Queen ascended to the throne, the world was not in a stable position. She was then only at the tender age of 25, but as she matured in her role, she shaped the monarchy to what became revered and admired around the world. Under her leadership for 70 years, she demonstrated a strength of character and a wisdom that are worthy of emulation. Undoubtedly, the monarchy of the United Kingdom has gained the confidence and trust of the world during her reign. That's why there is such an outpouring of grief for a universally loved human being and head of state. She was the embodiment of grace, and she represented continuity of purpose and a deep sense of service. The Queen reigned with great humility, so it is quite understandable why she was highly respected throughout her realms, dominions, and territories. She was a steady, guiding figure and solidified the iconic stature of the institution she represented. Undoubtedly, she recognized and appreciated the separation of powers and authorities generally, and as it applied to her remit as head of state. She refused to express public opinions on policy matters in keeping with a firm understanding of her role. Our late Queen of blessed memory espoused such values that enable all the world to understand what good governance in the Commonwealth meant. She was beloved for her exceptional care for that institution, and her impact on it and on the world beyond it was profound and far-reaching. She served selflessly and was caring to the concerns of many. During her reign, she was unwavering and resolute, particularly as it relates to her faith and her commitment to the common good of all people. Her leadership was unique, unmatched, and unparalleled in the devotion she showed for the betterment of who she served. She was the model of decency, and she reflected diplomacy and grace. She was majestic and conducted herself exemplarily in all respects. Her adventurous passion, self-discipline, and sometimes playful sense of humor identified our queen as no aloof and superior figure, but as a real and genuine human being. She embodied the very essence of peace and humility. Without any doubt, she was a stabilizing force, a unifying figure, remaining steadfast and never exploited her status or royal titles. She exuded and gave confidence to people in all circumstances. She was a queen for the people, and this could even be seen in the way she signed her letters simply as your servant. That speaks volumes of who she was. Her personal deportment and decorum, the entire manner in which she conducted herself, was truly exceptional. She was left and has left an impeccable record and made a stellar contribution that is exemplary and matchless. She was the consummate leader and public servant with incredible integrity. Even though she was adamantly disciplined and a stickler for protocol, she was minded to modernize and took measures that were transformational for our way of life. Yet even with such high callings and onerous responsibilities, our late queen was also a loving wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. On a personal level, I met and interacted with Her Majesty, the Queen, on numerous occasions, at least 6 times in my 10 terms here. And I was always in awe and wonderment at her wit and her ability to recall people she met here in Cayman, a small part of the many thousands whom she was apparently able to identify personally. In 2010, she remembered the lady that asked her, "Mom, what happened to your arm?" And she replied at Government House, that was, "Oh, I fell my horse and broke it." And the late Julia Hydes, 106 years old, at her death, said, "Well, that must have hurt." And the Queen replied, "It sure did." At the West Bay, in my constituency, opening of the sports center, and Julia asked her the same thing, and she replied the same way. And as we walked off, she said, "That lady asked me about that last night." And in 2010, she remembered that lady and asked about her. From a child going to school, specifically as I entered primary school at age 6 years old, Her Majesty had been on the throne 9 years then. I would say it was the beginning of my support of the monarch as we learned to sing, "God Save Our Gracious Queen." And those of us all around in this house and those who are listening otherwise, many would have been doing the same thing at that time, at that age. I am mindful that we paid our tributes to Her Majesty while she was still alive, just here last July. Then we came and said our words of joy in celebration of her long and happy reign. It gave me pause, too, to reflect on my collection of items over the years related to my dealings with her, and those were here on display for all to see here in the halls of this Parliament House, as well as items from other people in our community, and of course, from officialdom. And now, colleagues, this. Our world has changed much since 1961, and we here have tried to keep pace and steady the good ship Cayman. As we look back, We may be criticized for what we did or did not do, and we can say there's yet so much to do, but we have come a long ways, and we give God thanks for his many blessings on us. We have come a long ways in spite of many issues, many events, and sometimes many disappointments. Nevertheless, we are here, and we are still strong. Yet, in looking at her life, if we all could emulate the ways of our late queen and impart her ways to the youth of our islands, it would be a better place to live and move and have our being. Her legacy will be multifaceted, and it will accordingly be a challenging undertaking for His Majesty King Charles III as he takes the throne at this time because of the high bar she has set. But she has also left the example for us all to follow. Her death is painful, and that sting remains with us. I know deep within, she still lives amongst many of us, and her spirit and grace will resonate with us because she devoted her life and made sacrifices for the United Kingdom and the wider world. Her interaction with the public has been enduring and will remain a part of the fabric of lives here in the Cayman Islands and further afield in our Commonwealth, and indeed the world. She will be remembered and remain a permanent fixture in our lives. So we have lost an amazing, great, and remarkable queen. It seems to be the end of an era as this iconic and stoic lady leaves us. We believe in Almighty God, maker of heaven and earth, and we believe she is in a more serene and peaceful place now. And we are ever mindful that life is but a vapor, and we too only pass this way but once. So let the God she took throughout her life as her moral guidance be our guide too. On behalf of the people of my constituency of West Bay West and of my family and friends, we express sincere condolences to all the royal family and the bereaving people of the United Kingdom and throughout the world. God save the King.
Motion of suspension of the House for admission of His Excellency the Governor.
The Honorable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I rise to move a motion for the suspension of the House for the admission of His Excellency the Governor to bring his tributes to the late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Mr. Speaker, before doing that, I would join you in welcoming all of our honored guests. We want to join you in acknowledging and welcoming them to our this honored Parliament on this occasion. We're very pleased to have them with us. Mr. Speaker, now, in terms of the motion, it is as follows. Be it resolved that this Honourable House do suspend to invite His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Martin Keith Roper, to deliver an address on the occasion of the mourning of a nation on the death of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Question is, be it resolved that the Honorable House do suspend to invite His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Martin Keith Roper, OBE, to deliver an address on the occasion of the mourning of a nation on the death of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. The House will rise for a suspension.
Please rise, His Excellency, the Governor.
I will invite His Excellency, the Governor, to address this honorable Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, Honourable Premier, honourable members of this House of Parliament, and visiting ministers and dignitaries from the region, good afternoon. Today, I stand before you all with a heavy heart, feeling enormously sad as so many in this chamber, across our three islands, and indeed around the world, will no doubt have been feeling since learning of the death on Thursday of our late sovereign, Queen Elizabeth II. It is as though we have lost a cherished member of our own family, a matriarch. Her guiding presence was always felt. Her wise counsel we were comforted to know she willingly shared, and whose love of God and for all those over whom she reigned radiated brightly with such warmth. I want to thank Speaker Bush for convening this extraordinary session of Parliament to allow us all, whilst grieving the late Queen's loss, to reflect on Her Majesty's extraordinary life of service, express what she meant to us individually, and share our personal memories of her that we will cherish. I am grateful and honoured to have this opportunity to address this noble House of Parliament. Her late Majesty ruled for longer than any other monarch in British history. Yet even before ascending to the throne, she dedicated her life to the service of her people. In her now famous 21st birthday speech, she declared, that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service. With those words, she set the tone for a lifetime of commitment to her people. I believe we can say she fully succeeded. In the course of her 23,000 days on the throne, the late Queen Elizabeth won hearts, not just in the UK, but around the world. Through her dedication to duty and quiet diplomacy, she also earned the respect of so many, from world leaders to ordinary people whose lives she touched. She said that she often drew strength from meeting ordinary people doing extraordinary things: volunteers, carers, community organizers, and good neighbors, unsung heroes whose quiet dedication makes them special. She saw such people as an inspiration to those who knew them, as she, in turn, was an inspiration to them. Her 70-year reign saw her travel more widely than any other monarch, undertaking over 260 official visits overseas, including 82 state visits. She was the best diplomat Britain has ever had, affirming old relationships and building new connections. And I have been incredibly proud to work for Her Majesty's diplomatic service for almost 4 decades. No one did more than Her Majesty to strengthen the bonds of friendship, understanding, and respect between the UK and the rest of the world. She met 13 presidents of the United States, 7 popes, and countless other world and faith leaders. She was renowned for her intelligent questioning of world affairs and a detailed grasp of the issues. She famously left economists speechless after the 2008 financial crisis, asking simply why they didn't see it coming. Through sharing her experience and giving words of support, she helped so many people over the years. That role was, of course, evident in the late Queen's weekly audience with her Prime Minister throughout her reign in order to discuss government matters. In these entirely private meetings, Her late Majesty, whilst remaining politically neutral on all matters, was able to advise and warn her Prime Minister as she felt necessary. It is poignant to note that she saw off her 14th Prime Minister, as Boris Johnson so characteristically put it, and received her 15th Prime Minister, Liz Truss, just 2 days before her passing. A remarkable demonstration of her duty and service to the very end. Under her watchful gaze as head of the Commonwealth, it grew to a family of 54 nations. Historians have credited the late Queen with having a great impact in building the Commonwealth as Britain retreated from empire. Between 1952 and 2015, when she ceased overseas travel, she visited every single Commonwealth country, except for Cameroon and Rwanda, 2 very recent members. During that same time period, Her Majesty only ever missed 2 Commonwealth heads of government meetings. She referred to it as her beloved Commonwealth. Throughout years of tremendous change in international affairs, the late Queen was a source of continuity and stability. From post-World War II Britain to post-EU exit Britain. From a time when we had just a single broadcaster, the BBC, to the complex social media world of today. And from times defined by deference to a period when all authority is questioned. She embodied the stability and continuity of the monarchy when so much else was changing. She thus helped Britain, the realms, the territories, to weather the storm. She transcended politics and geography, touching the lives of millions of people across the world. Poet Philip Larkin once said about her, "In times when nothing stood, but worsened or grew strange, there was one constant good. She did not change." She was arguably the greatest monarch we have had and one of the greatest leaders the world has ever known. She was a remarkable figurehead for the UK and its overseas territories during times of enormous social change. We were privileged to host Her late Majesty twice in Cayman in 1983 and 1994. I feel sure that some of the recollections we will hear today will be about those two wonderful visits. I was fortunate to meet Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth 3 times during the course of my diplomatic career, once at Windsor Castle and twice at Buckingham Palace, the last time as governor of these wonderful Cayman Islands. She had a remarkable quality of putting people at ease. She had a magnetism that made you smile. She had a wonderful sense of humor. Who can forget the James Bond and Paddington Bear sketches? They took our breath away. And she had a wonderful sense of humor. When Lizzie and I saw her at Windsor Castle, she told the story of a senior foreign military official who had said to her, "Mom, why do you build your castles so close to the airport?" Windsor Castle being under the flight path of Heathrow Airport. I think she enjoyed retelling that one. Her late Majesty knew that for many, having an audience with her was a daunting, even frightening experience. But she ensured that it was relaxed, highly memorable, and fun. It has been said that she took her role very seriously, but did not take herself too seriously. We can all perhaps reflect on that. Her late Majesty once said, "Each day is a new beginning. I know that the only way to live my life is to try to do what is right, to take the long view, to give of my best in all that the day brings, and to put my trust in God." How lucky we have been as her loyal subjects to have benefited from all that she did for us in that spirit. Her dignity, calmness, steadfastness, and incomparable dedication to duty set an outstanding example for all of us. Who will ever forget the image of Her late Majesty sitting alone in black at the funeral of her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh? Her late Majesty understood that grief is the price we pay for love. I must echo the words of her beloved grandson, the newly titled Prince of Wales, who acknowledges that of all of the sadness we all feel in the coming weeks will be testament to the love we felt for our extraordinary queen and that she felt for us. She was unquestionably the greatest public servant we will see in our lifetimes, a quite extraordinary lady who will be greatly missed. While we may feel intense sadness at Her Majesty's passing, at the same time we celebrate the proclamation of King Charles III as our new monarch. It is a unique mix of complex feelings, sadness and joy, leaving many feeling unsettled. But it is part of the process of our constitutional monarchy. The strong links between parliaments and monarchy go back centuries. The connective thread between one period and the next is the unshakable fabric of our constitution. It enables us to look forward with optimism and confidence here in Cayman and the UK. I also know from my discussions with Her late Majesty and our new monarch that they share your pride in the enormous transformation that has taken place in our islands over the Queen's reign. Cayman is a remarkable success story and a beacon in the region. I am proud that links between Cayman and the UK, nurtured by mutual affection, trust and respect, are in excellent shape. The royal family have played a fundamental and pivotal role in that. As we look to the future, we were honoured yesterday at Government House to give the proclamation for His Majesty King Charles III. Her late Majesty's longevity means it is probably the first time in history that we have proclaimed a new king in the Cayman Islands. It was a moving and historic occasion. Who did not shed a tear as we sang for the first time in over 70 years the national anthem, God Save the King? I know that His Majesty's visit here 3 years ago with the Queen Consort is fondly remembered. Thousands of people came out to see them. We can be confident that his commitment and support for Cayman and the overseas territories is steadfast. As we mourn and deeply lament the loss of Her late Majesty, we pledge our support to our new king as one era ends and a new era begins. May God bless these wonderful Cayman Islands. May God receive his faithful servant, Queen Elizabeth II, and may she rest in eternal peace. God save the King. Thank you.
Please rise, Mr. Speaker.
Please be seated. The House has resumed its sitting.
Motion of thanks to His Excellency, the Governor.
The Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise and move the motion of thanks to His Excellency the Governor, which reads as follows. Be it resolved that this Honourable Parliament records its grateful thanks to His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Martin K. Roper, OBE, for the address delivered on this occasion of the mourning of the death of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II.
Thank you. Out of an abundance of caution, I think we better call for the ayes and the noes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Condolences by members of parliament.
Floor is open. The Honorable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to rise and offer some reflections this afternoon on behalf of the people of the Cayman Islands and those of my constituency, of Newlands in particular, on the life and passing of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, to offer condolences to her family and to acknowledge and pledge our support to the new sovereign, King Charles III. Mr. Speaker, Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II famously promised, as noted earlier, to dedicate her whole life, whether it be long or short, to serve the people of Britain and its imperial family. Mr. Speaker, she faithfully, dutifully, brilliantly kept that promise for 70 years and 7 months. Mr. Speaker, last Thursday is a day that I shall not soon forget. In the days since her passing, people here and around the world, from all walks of life, I think have surprised themselves with the feelings of sadness and grief, and some quite intense. Some described initial feelings as being unmoored, untethered, feeling generally out of sorts. In her death, Mr. Speaker, we are faced with a deep sense of loss. The loss of a majestic and noble queen, the loss of a dignified, decent, and deeply respected world leader. Mr. Speaker, I offer condolences to her family, her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, her close friends, and other members of the royal household. Her family have lost a devoted mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. Mr. Speaker, Her late Majesty was a calming constant over 7 decades. She held steady steer through economic challenges, periods of geopolitical tension, climate change, personal challenges, and yes, the COVID-19 pandemic. Through it all, she remained measured and dignified, becoming one of the most respected leaders in modern history. So what might we as leaders inside and outside this honorable house, in the region and around the world, learn from our Queen's legacy? The first thing we might take away, Mr. Speaker, is to focus on our purpose. We have in her legacy an impeccable example of a leader who was crystal clear in her purpose and the purpose of her role. Her purpose was to ensure good governance and to be of service to the public. Reflecting on a life of dedicated public service, I'm reminded of the words in Mark 10, verse 45, in which we read the words of Christ, who said, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." As public servants, it is our responsibility to others that must be front and center of our decisions and our conduct. Not our wants, not our passions, not our egos, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second takeaway that I would note is relating to our conduct as leaders. It is said that the Queen decided early on to adopt the leadership principle of actions speak louder than words, and to lead by example rather than by rhetoric. In our late Queen, Mr. Speaker, we have had a global leader who embodied a deep respect for others. She practiced restraint. She chose her words carefully, using her voice to encourage, to support, to give hope. She carried out her duties with an abiding faith in God and genuine humility. Her long record is clear, Mr. Speaker. She was a leader who did not let her title or the privileges afforded to the lofty position of her high office go to her head, as we would say. She understood that public figures were going to be subjected to scrutiny. I once said, and I quote, "Criticism is good for people and institutions that are part of public life. No institution, city, monarch, whatever, should expect to be free from the scrutiny of those who give it their loyalty and support, not to mention those who don't." End quote. Perhaps most notable, Mr. Speaker, of all her leadership traits will be her integrity. She was a leader whose personal and professional life were balanced on the fulcrum of integrity. She did the hard right, not the easy wrong. The third takeaway, Mr. Speaker, might be in relation to our attitude. Despite her nobility, despite her privilege, despite all that glorified her, she embodied humility and selflessness. She was not self-centered or self-absorbed. She didn't believe that it was all about her, her image, or her glory. The Queen, Mr. Speaker, encouraged us to be mindful of our responsibilities and to be deliberate about our attitudes. Our attitudes, Mr. Speaker, are of supreme importance. The way we show up, interact, engage, and communicate with others at home, at work, and in the community defines us. As leaders, let us be inspired by the life and legacy of Her late Majesty. And may we never confuse our position or our office as being about our personal identity. Let us recommit ourselves to our purpose and to hold first and foremost the responsibilities of our roles. Let us commit our time, talent, and treasure to improving the lives of the people we serve, and in so doing, resist the impulsive pull of our ego, which might tempt us to put ourselves first. We will all be better leaders, Mr. Speaker, and dare I say, better people, if we chose to deliberately practice her leadership traits in our day-to-day dealings, choosing purpose, humility, selflessness, dignity, and above all, integrity. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier this year during the special church service held at Elmslie Memorial to mark Her late Majesty's Platinum Jubilee, many Caymanians treasure the memories they have of meeting the Queen when more than a quarter of the island's population turned out in 1983 to greet the Queen and Prince Philip at Owen Roberts International Airport. It was the year she officially opened the Pines Retirement Home. She returned again, as previously noted, in 1994, a knighted longtime Caymanian public servant, Sir Vassal Johnson, and officially opened the Queen Elizabeth II Botanic Park. Mr. Speaker, the visits to our beautiful Cayman Islands and her willingness to meet hundreds and thousands of Caymanians endeared her even more to us. She was and forever will be our Queen. From the announcement of Her late Majesty the Queen's passing on Thursday, 8 September 2022, the people of the Cayman Islands joined others around the world in mourning this incredible loss. Through a full slate of commemorative activities and events, we are remembering her great legacy during this period of national mourning, which ends on Tuesday, 20th of September. The Cayman Islands, Mr. Speaker, together with the United Kingdom, other overseas territories, and the realms participated in the 96 gun salute on Friday, 9th September. We had the reading of the proclamation for the new sovereign, King Charles III, on Sunday, the 11th of September. And we will observe 2 minutes of silence on the day of the state funeral on Monday, the 19th of September, which I believe everyone is aware will also be a public holiday. Across our islands, Mr. Speaker, we will remember and commemorate the life of Her late Majesty in several other ways, including in some ways that are special to our Cayman Islands community. I will highlight just a few. What started on the Friday, the 9th of September, Mr. Speaker, was a practice of having all ships leaving the harbor, leaving Hogseye Bay, giving 9 short blasts on their horn as they leave, to remind us all of Her Majesty's departure from the Cayman Islands and what would have been her last visit to our shores in 1994. She arrived and departed aboard the Royal Yacht Britannia via Hogseye Bay. I pause here to note that the civil service played a central role in organizing that and other royal visits, including in 2019, when we received His Majesty King Charles III, then the Prince of Wales, an act of service of the highest honor. Also from Friday, 9th September, the Government Administration Building, as well as the Clock Tower in Georgetown, which was constructed in memory of King George V, Her late Majesty the Queen's grandfather, has been illuminated in dark blue, a serene and calming color, which represents responsibility, integrity, stability, and reliability. A fitting tribute, Mr. Speaker, to the Queen. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands, as we all know, have a strong Christian heritage, and churches and people of faith across our country are participating in national mourning activities. And so on Wednesday, the 14th of September at 12:30, church bells will toll for 96 seconds, 1 second for each year of Her late Majesty's life. And on the weekend prior to the state funeral, that is Saturday, the 17th of September, and Sunday, the 18th of September, churches will include a special prayer in their worship service. Mr. Speaker, our period of national mourning will end on the morning of Tuesday, 20th September. In recognition of the special relationship between the overseas territories and the monarchy, representatives of the governments of the overseas territories have been invited to London next week to mark the solemn occasion and pay our final respects to Her late Majesty the Queen. I believe this week, it's next week. Mr. Speaker, the Governor and Mrs. Roper, along with my wife and I, and the Cayman Islands Government UK representative in London, have been invited to the official lying in state at Westminster Hall and to attend a formal signing of the Book of Condolences at Lancaster House. Mr. Speaker, I hope to be able to offer a short tribute on behalf of the people of our wonderful Cayman Islands. Which I believe will be recorded, I hope will be recorded, on behalf of our late Queen Elizabeth II. And of course, on Monday, the governor and I will attend the official state funeral, and immediately thereafter attend a Foreign Secretary's reception. Mr. Speaker, it has been a great time of sadness, a solemn time, and I think it is fitting, absolutely fitting, that we honor and celebrate the life and the legacy of the late Queen Elizabeth II. Many of the elder leaders of our community, Mr. Speaker, will recall their meetings with Her late Majesty. For some of us, younger leaders, myself included, we have had more frequent interactions with the former Prince Charles, now King Charles III, who, as we all know, was a very active royal, working for decades, and who visited Cayman in 2019. We know that he has been a passionate advocate for the causes which matter to him. He's long been a champion, an advocate for important issues such as social justice, underprivileged young people, agriculture, and even community development. And nowhere has former Prince Charles and now King Charles III, Mr. Speaker, been more outspoken than on the undeniable threat posed by climate change. Last year, Mr. Speaker, speaking at COP26 at the opening ceremony, he warned that the time for addressing climate change had quite literally run out. In order to tackle the problem, he said, we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing. Naturally, Mr. Speaker, as the King, he will have to adhere to the political neutrality enshrined in the Constitution. But I, for one, am confident that King Charles III will meet and exceed the expectations the world has of him. He is well prepared for the burden and responsibilities of his role, Mr. Speaker. He's had the benefit of excellent tutelage over the course of a long apprenticeship. Mr. Speaker, his late mother set an unquestionably stellar and excellent example for him. All this will stand him in good stead to continue as he leads this as the sovereign of Britain and its realms. In his words, his own words, Mr. Speaker, he said last week in a televised event, as the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself throughout the remaining time God grants me to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. As this second Elizabethan era has come to a close, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the government and the people of the Cayman Islands, it is my distinct honor to give this tribute, to express our sincere gratitude and to convey our immense respect for Her late Majesty's long life of distinguished service. God save the King.
The Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, it is but 3 short months since people across our islands came together to mark the Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. I am sure that, like me, members of this honorable Parliament will recall that summer weekend as a time of celebration and unbridled joy. Now, we in this Parliament and the people across the Cayman Islands gather once again, Mr. Speaker. This time, however, it is to mourn and to grieve the passing of Her Majesty. I am sure that, like me, members here will recognize this as a time of grief and great sadness. Yet, in our grief and sadness, we must look within ourselves and find the fortitude once again to celebrate. We must celebrate a life well lived, a life of immense dedication to duty, a life lived in the strength of faith, and a life of love and of giving, from which all of us who have been her subjects have benefited so greatly. The Queen's dedication to her duty has been evident throughout all her life of public service. From her service in uniform during the Second World War, right up to the audience during which she invited her 15th Prime Minister to form a government just 2 days before her death, never did that dedication waver. On Her Majesty's 21st birthday, she committed herself to a life of service, and there can be few people throughout human history who have honored such a freely given commitment so fully through such a long life. As Her Majesty herself reflected, Mr. Speaker, that sense of duty was rooted in her faith. As head of the Church of England, the Queen was required to participate in a variety of public acts of devotion, but her own faith was deeply rooted and personal. That faith gave her strength in times of trouble and gave her humility during good times. In both good times and bad times, she set a very strong example for all of us. Her Majesty's love for her subjects and the bond she created between monarch and people have been no more evident than over the last few days. I suspect that we all experienced similar feelings last week, Thursday. When first the news came through that Her Majesty's doctors were concerned for her health and that her family was gathering at her bedside, we continued to hope and pray. It seemed impossible that the life of one who had been an ever-present reassurance in our own lives could be drawing to a close. But within hours, devastating news flashed around the world that Her Majesty had passed away. Our initial disbelief quickly gave way to being replaced by the kind of sense of loss that we normally experience when a member of our own close family is taken from us. A sense of loss that is being shared by billions across the world today. That sense of loss speaks to the person that Queen Elizabeth was, rather than simply the position that she held. As our monarch and head of state, it would be easy to stand aloof, particularly at a distance of some 5,000 miles from us. Yet, Her Majesty felt a part of our everyday lives. It was in the early years of her reign that our predecessors made the deliberate decision to maintain our ties with the United Kingdom and to become what is now a British overseas territory. There is not a day that goes by, Mr. Speaker, that I am not grateful to them for the wisdom of that decision. But what that means, Mr. Speaker, is that throughout the more than 60 years that the Cayman Islands have grown and developed as a nation, our Queen has been a constant and unswerving presence. As we have been reminded many times, it was during her reign that we received our coat of arms and our first constitution. The commitment that Caymanians made to the United Kingdom has been reciprocated in the love and affection that our Queen has shown for our islands and our people. That was evident to all of us who witnessed Her Majesty's 2 visits to Cayman in 1983 and 1984. Those were very special times for our islands. And there are still many people for whom those visits are recalled with a strong sense of pride and a special place in our hearts. It was not during those visits, however, that Queen Elizabeth held our people in her heart. I hope I'm not betraying any confidences, Mr. Speaker, when I say that over the years I have spoken to more than one governor of these islands who has reflected upon the Queen's keen interest in our people and our well-being during their audiences with Her Majesty. It is small wonder then, Mr. Speaker, that the news of Her Majesty's passing has hit us all so hard. With heavy hearts, our thoughts now turn to the final farewell. I do hope that some of those Caymanians currently in the UK will have the opportunity to say farewell in person during the coming lying in state. However, whether in person or not, I am sure that each of us during the days ahead will reflect on Her Majesty's life and mourn, yes, but also give thanks for all that she has accomplished. Even as we mourn the passing of our Queen, Mr. Speaker, our thoughts turn to our new King. For we are, of course, never without a monarch. And so, as soon as Queen Elizabeth II passed away, so King Charles III acceded to the throne. A fact we marked here in Cayman only yesterday morning with the governor's reading of the proclamation of the new sovereign. We all have memories of the last visit of the King to all 3 Cayman Islands in 2019. During that visit, thousands turned out to show their respect and appreciation for the then Prince and his mother, the Queen. And so my first thought is not for Charles the King, but for Charles the son. For it is, after all, the passing of his mother that we all mourn this afternoon. The Queen was perhaps first and foremost a mother, a grandmother, and great-grandmother. In our own grief, we must recognize the grief of the close family that Her Majesty has left behind. And on behalf of everyone in these islands, I extend heartfelt condolences to the royal family, and I hope that the thoughts and prayers of our people will offer them some comfort at this time. For Charles, King Charles, this must be an exceptionally difficult time, even as he grieves the passing of his mother. He finds himself swept up in a myriad of new duties that he must now take on and fulfill. I pray that his own faith and his belief in everlasting life will sustain him through this time of trial. The tradition of the immediate passing of the crown from one head to another has given rise to the custom of making the death of our Queen with the cry of marking the death of our Queen with a cry of "God save the King," in both recognition of his birthright and as a statement of hope for the future. I have added my voice to that cry, Mr. Speaker, God save the King. But I just want to add to the statement of hope it conveys. I hope and I pray that God will grant to our new King the wisdom that will be necessary to guide our family of nations through an uncertain future. I hope and I pray that the bond between king and people will strengthen and flourish in the years ahead. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I hope and I pray that our new King will be able to draw on the same reserves of duty, faith, and love that made Queen Elizabeth the wonderful person and the exceptional monarch that she was. For King Charles, there can be no better example of how to rule than the example set by his mother and our late sovereign, Queen Elizabeth. May her example guide King Charles and give him the strength and fortitude he will need in the years ahead. And may her soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the good, decent, and hardworking people of Boddentown West, that I am honored and humbled to serve and represent in this honorable parliament, I rise to add my voice in paying respects to the late Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, who was known around the world as Queen Elizabeth II, and who, on the 8th of September, 2022, slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. Mr. Speaker, when the Queen ascended to the throne on the 6th of February, 1952, my mother wasn't even born. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, none of us in this honorable parliament were born. Mr. Speaker, when I consider that not only did she serve for 70 years and 214 days, but also just 2 days prior to her passing, Mr. Speaker, 2 days, the Queen appointed her 15th Prime Minister. I cannot begin to comprehend her state of health at that time, Mr. Speaker, and I won't even try. Instead, I will thank the Queen, now of blessed memory, for being an example of duty, service, and commitment. Mr. Speaker, it is also not lost on me that some of the people that I represent have mixed feelings with regards to the role of the monarchy in today's world. And there's nothing wrong with that, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this year, around the same time as the Queen Platinum Jubilee, a poll was conducted and found that only 62% of people in Britain feel that there should be a monarchy in the future, with 22% saying no, and the rest were undecided. Surprisingly, Mr. Speaker, back in 1994, there was a speech delivered by the current UK Prime Minister Liz Truss calling for an end to the monarchy. That's not surprising when considering that when we look at the generational divide in Britain, that 49% of the people between the ages of 29 to 49 says that the monarchy is not good for Britain. But Mr. Speaker, I say all of this to say that despite what people felt about the monarch, during the same poll that was conducted, the Queen was only disliked by 8%. Her favorability rating was through the roof. 92%, Mr. Speaker, a favorability rating. That would be the envy of any politician around the world to have those kind of numbers. What does this say, Mr. Speaker? It tells us that the late Queen Elizabeth transcended the very monarchy that she represented. Not only did she redefine the monarchy in today's world, she became a larger-than-life figure, so much so that regardless of what you thought about the monarchy, you couldn't help but admire and respect the person, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor. Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, at one of the functions where we were celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, I told a story of an interview with Prince Charles, where the interviewer asked him if he would ever be king, to which he replied, "In order for me to be king, my mom would have to die. Why would I want my mother to die. Mr. Speaker, as we watch the events of the past few days, it says something about our monarchs. It says something about our heads of state. Each of them came into office at a sad time. They came into office at a time of grief and sorrow, but we all expect them to do their jobs while still grieving. Mr. Speaker, I'm not afraid to say that I'm a mama's boy. And I can tell you right now that I, for one, would not have been able to do what I saw King Charles did, following the passing of his mother. I would have been a total wreck. Mr. Speaker, I am happy to have been alive during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. I am happy, Mr. Speaker, to be alive during the reign of King Charles III. And to borrow a phrase from Edwin Stanton, Mr. Speaker, Queen Elizabeth now belongs to the ages, but we preferred when she belonged to us. God save the King.
The Honorable, the Minister of Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like you and the Honorable Premier, I want to first start by welcoming our visiting colleagues from the region, particularly those in aviation and tourism. As most members are aware, we are the hosts for the CTO conference, so I welcome them and I ask that they be allowed to be excused when they feel fit as they prepare for proceedings later this evening. Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you for quickly calling on this honorable House to give us the opportunity to share our condolences and sympathy in respect to what has transpired last week with our gracious Queen. On behalf of the good people of Georgetown Central that I represent, I have to stand here and express their love and appreciation for everything that she has done over her 70 years. But Mr. Speaker, as I suspected, many of the amazing historical moments of what she represents and has done has been mentioned by your Honorable Self, the Honorable Deputy Premier, the Honorable Premier, the Honorable Opposition Leader. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to take away these notes and just share my own personal opinion, personal feeling about the loss of the Queen and what it means to me as a human being, not as a politician.
Before you embark on that, can I ask the Honorable Premier for a motion at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move a motion for the suspension of Standing Order 10-2 to enable the House to continue beyond the hour of interruption.
Question is that the House do continue after the hour of 4:30 p.m. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, the ayes have it. The House will continue. Honorable Minister continuing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we took the suspension, I was about to say about my personal view in respect to the Queen. Because, Mr. Speaker, those who have spoken before me have the benefit of age and understanding the historical nature of how our great nation came to where it is and what the British Empire and the reign of the Queen meant to the development of our country. But Mr. Speaker, I'm a young pup in this business. And sadly, I may never fully appreciate as much as you do what she has done for the opportunities that we all have in this room and this building that we have, the economy that we have. And it's because of her strength, her leadership for 70 years. There's some countries that don't have great leaders, and as a result, they don't have great economies because of political instability. So not only do I owe her love and appreciation, but I owe her the future of my children, because today I live in a country where I can provide in a safe manner because of the things that she has done. I can provide for my family, my loved ones, and my community and my people. Mr. Speaker, when I heard about the Queen's passing, I was not sure what to do, whether to cry, whether to celebrate. And you've heard that feeling kind of echoed in many people's deliveries so far of mixed emotions. How can you not celebrate something so amazing? A woman that's shining brighter than the sun. Her love across the oceans, we've seen where countries have saluted her in a way where the Eiffel Tower has been shut off in celebration of her. The great statue of Jesus in Rio de Janeiro was lit up in the colors of the UK. We see that Australia has plans to have their monuments celebrated in her name. And countries will continue to do many celebrations over the next days as we mourn her loss. And we're not talking about countries that only had allegiance to the Commonwealth, but countries that have even had wars with the Commonwealth. That's how much she has been respected. And I am glad that I was born in an era to have witnessed it myself. And I also am very happy that I would be able to say that I was one of those children that saw when she visited our islands. Mr. Speaker, in effort to keep this short, I want to say on behalf of the good people that I represent, on behalf of my family, I send the greatest sympathy and give my condolences to the royal family at this most difficult time. I will never try to even comprehend it because it's bigger than me. But I would want to share the Leader of Opposition's comments in respect to sending the confidence in our new monarch, our new head, our king. And from the people of Georgetown Central and the Cayman Islands, I would say, God save the king, and long shall he reign.
The member for Red Bay, the honorable member for Red Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the close of his life, the Apostle Paul wrote to young Timothy, The time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 to 8. Mr. Speaker, as Thursday dawned in Cayman, the UK being 6 hours ahead, and I started to awaken. Unfortunately, I sleep with the television on all night. To the early reports that the Queen's doctors had indicated her health was failing and they were concerned about it. Those of us who have been around for a little while know how very discreet the palace is about discussions relating to the health of any of the royals. So I, like many others, I'm sure, feared the worst. And when the announcement finally came, Mr. Speaker, I was shaken. I say, Mr. Speaker, without any exaggeration, that the closest thing I can relate it to was the loss of my own parents. When I realized then, on my father's death, who was actually the same age as Queen Elizabeth II, both having been born in 1926, that I was an orphan. What I mean by that, Mr. Speaker, is the sense that someone that has been there all your life, a rock that you can lean on, a person on whom you can depend, is gone. And Mr. Speaker, for most of us, in fact, I believe for most of the world, we don't know of a time when Queen Elizabeth II was not sovereign. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is going to take some getting used to. I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that His Majesty, King Charles III, will do all he possibly can to emulate his mother. He has said as much in his handling of the affairs of state and in his recognition and respect for the constitutional monarchy that the United Kingdom is. He has, as has been said here earlier, had a long apprenticeship. He's now 73. But the shoes which he has to fill will be very difficult for any other human being, I believe, to fill. 70 years of service, of sacrifice, 70 years of conducting herself with impeccable dignity and grace through all of the challenges which one, and more than that one would come to expect in a life so long-lived and at such a celebrity level. She has seen and experienced tragedy, trauma, sorrow, loss, disappointment, embarrassment, none of which caused by her. But she has steadfastly persevered, conducted herself impeccably. She has, as His Excellency the Governor said earlier, been the greatest diplomat the United Kingdom has ever known. Her use of soft power requires a skill that no school can teach you. And for those who have paid attention to her life, she did not start out as one very outgoing or articulate sovereign. A young woman, aged 25, her father taken suddenly while she was away with her husband. She left Britain as a princess and returned as Queen Elizabeth II. She too, like all of the rest of us, would have had to learn to grow into the job that she did. And over the span of those 70 years and 7 months that she reigned, she grew into the most admired leader the world over. Admired by virtually everyone, even, shall I say, a tyrant like Putin. Even he has paid respect to her service. So, Mr. Speaker, as I've said, her passing, though inevitable, has left not just the United Kingdom and its territories with a deep sense of loss and feeling of uncertainty, but that, Mr. Speaker, is a feeling, I believe, that pervades much of the world. Her absence from the global stage, and therefore the lack of her presence exercising that quiet power and diplomacy, influencing for the good many a situation, many a quarrel. Someone, Mr. Speaker, is going to have to step up and fill that void. Mr. Speaker, much has been said about many of the things that she has done and been part of. I have been glued to the television, quite frankly, ever since the first announcements came. And parliaments all over the world have held sessions such as this to pay tribute to this incredible woman, this incredible queen. Just today, the joint meetings of the House of Lords and the House of Commons did the same, and King Charles III was able to address them and to receive their condolences. And then later this afternoon, in Scotland, in Edinburgh, they did the same. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is only fitting that we, who are a British overseas territory, that our parliament today does the same. Mr. Speaker, not much has been said in the recent days since her passing about her incredible role as head of the Commonwealth. Mr. Speaker, to put things in perspective, World War II had ended in 1945. She ascended the throne in 1952. Realizing her late father King George VI, realizing that independence of former colonies would result in a much smaller British Empire, and that the days when it was said that the sun never sets on the British Empire were soon coming to a close, had conceived of the idea of the Commonwealth of Nations. But if memory serves me right, at the time of his death in 1952, there were only five or six Commonwealth countries. The Commonwealth has grown to 54 under her leadership. It is an institution of which she was incredibly proud and extremely concerned about its future. Over the course of her long reign, and in the aftermath of the Second World War, more and more nations, former colonies, sought independence, including in this region. And as those numbers shrunk, the numbers of members of the Commonwealth almost correspondingly increased. Mr. Speaker, at the time of her death, she was the head of state for 15 independent countries. She had been head of state of a total of 32 countries over the course of her long reign. Mr. Speaker, when Her Majesty visited the Cayman Islands in 1983 and 1994, I did not encounter her at all. I was a long ways from this thing called politics, and I was too old to still be in school. So I never met her at all. But in the almost 8 years that I had the honor and privilege of being Premier, I was in her presence on a number of occasions. The last, Mr. Speaker, was at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London in April of 2018. As president of the British Overseas Territories Association at the time, I had the honor to be invited to the opening ceremony of SHOGM, as it's called, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, at which Her late Majesty delivered the main address. I was struck, Mr. Speaker, then at her concern about the continuity of the Commonwealth, of the Commonwealth of Nations as an institution. For she recognized the way the plates had been shifting around the world and the concerns that many people had about the continued relevance of a Commonwealth of Nations. And she made the case for why it was still a force for good in an ever-changing world. And in recognition of her age, she didn't say this, but it was clear once you thought about it. She made the case for why Prince Charles, as he then was, should be chosen to become the head of the Commonwealth upon her passing. She was, she was, until the very end, I believe, concerned about this institution, which had been started by her late father, which she believed so much in, as I said, as a force for good across the world, continuing. And she knew full well the influence her words would have on the heads of government as to who should succeed her as head of that institution. Mr. Speaker, her loss is incredible. But she lived a long and an incredibly productive life. My late father, who was also very philosophical about things, used to say to us all the time, laughingly even, the young may die, but the old must. And so, Mr. Speaker, we all grieve deeply the loss of someone so incredible, one who has been such a powerful force for good, not just in the UK and its territories, but across this world. We offer condolences to King Charles and all of our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and wider family, and to our family in the United Kingdom and the other overseas territories. But, Mr. Speaker, transitions like this must occur. It is the nature of life, the circle of life. And I do believe, Mr. Speaker, that in King Charles III, she has a worthy successor. I have had, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity to spend considerable time with Prince Charles as he then was. I still wonder at the amount of time that he was prepared to give the Premier of the Cayman Islands when he was here in 2019. I will be forever grateful to him and to His Excellency the Governor and the others who did afford those opportunities. Mr. Speaker, I spent the best part of 2 hours with His Excellency the Governor, Martin Roper, and then Prince Charles at Government House, talking about a range of issues that affected not just Cayman and the overseas territories and the UK, but more broadly, issues of climate change and concerns about the environment and various other matters. I was struck, Mr. Speaker, immediately by his grasp of the issues that the world was confronting, and his fact that he had clearly taken time to be properly briefed about what issues were relevant immediately in Cayman and to the people of Cayman. He thought deeply about how best to float this idea, which he had been pushing, which hadn't really gotten much traction in years past, about developing a blue-green fund to be able to fund environmental projects across the world. And he had concluded, based on advice that he had, that doing so through a Cayman funds vehicle was probably the best way to go about it. And so we spoke about these and other matters at length, Mr. Speaker. I also accompanied him on visits, aside from Grand Cayman, to the sister islands, Mr. Speaker. And I had the incredible privilege of flying with him and His Excellency the Governor in one of our new helicopters from Little Cayman, and we landed at Clifton Hunter High School on the football field. It's one of those experiences which will stay with me forever, seated next to the Prince all the way down. He treated us here in Cayman incredibly well. He was more than complimentary about the way that we had received him. He told me, quite overwhelmed by the size of the crowd at Pedro St. James. He said that I had organized just a small garden party. And you would think he was quite taken aback when he came around the corner and saw the amount of people that were seated there. Mr. Speaker, beyond that, in 2020, in February of 2020, at his request, I led a Cayman delegation made up of myself and some lawyers and accountants, local accountants, and my team. He invited us to his private residence at Highgrove, where we sat for a few hours to talk about and to start to really develop this blue-green Cayman fund, which I am happy to say is now in existence. Mr. Speaker, those of us who have been watching television from his very first address to the nation following his mother's death, I believe would have been moved incredibly by how expressive he was of his love and affection for his darling mama, as he called her. A level of expression of emotion that one normally does not associate with British royalty. But I think through that and the number of other speeches that he has made since her passing, it is clear that King Charles III understands what he needs to do to continue this relationship between the royalty and the people. And if I may dare say so, I think he is off to an excellent start. The feeling and the emotion and the expression of the British people, including the Scottish ones so far, has been one of deep with people all across the United Kingdom and the broader world in wishing King Charles III the very best as he starts out on what is, without question, going to be a very challenging period for however long the good Lord permits him to reign. Mr. Speaker, the scenes in Edinburgh today, well, throughout Scotland, really, the travel from Balmoral Castle all the way down has been just, I'm not sure what word I'm searching for here, but it's been, because I keep using incredible, but the Queen and others had obviously carefully, very carefully planned how all of this would go. And the Parliament, the First Minister in Scotland, they were all respectful, full of love and gratitude for the relationship between the Queen in particular, but indeed the royal family and the people of Scotland. But make no bones about it, this is the period of mourning. There looms the big question of how long Scotland will remain part of the Union. And King Charles III will almost, God his life sparing, will be the sovereign who will have to deal with that, as his dear departed mother had to when the first referendum on independence was held. That is but one example of the challenges that the new sovereign will face. But he has said, Mr. Speaker, and I believe we must believe him, that he, as his mother did before him, will commit the rest of his life to serving the people of the United Kingdom to the very best of his ability. I believe I can speak for all members in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, when I say we wish him all the very best. God bless the dear departed Queen. Long live the King.
The member for Westby North.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to represent the people of Westby North in order to offer condolences to the family of the Queen. A lot of us here have lost our mother or our father, some of us both. It's not a good feeling, and we do wish them in this time of bereavement that God will give them strength. Thank you.
Member for Northside.
Mr. Speaker, it is with profound sadness that I stand here today on behalf of the people of Northside and indeed these islands to express our deep regret on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. As the United Kingdom's longest lived and longest reigning head of state, Her Majesty the Queen was widely admired for her devotion, dignity, and dedication around the world. Her Majesty devoted her whole life to service, which was a promise she made on her 21st birthday in April 1947, while visiting Cape Town in South Africa. At the time, she said, I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family, of which we all belong. Mr. Speaker, we are forever grateful to her commitment to those words and for her contribution to the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and the overseas territories. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty was deeply loved by the people of the Cayman Islands, as she so calmly and sincerely demonstrated the respect to us as we managed our own affairs while still being very much a part of the United Kingdom. My constituency in Northside have very fond memories of her 2 visits to Grand Cayman, where she conducted official duties accompanied by the late Prince Philip. In particular, in 1983, when she opened the Queens Highway, the road that connects from North Side to East End. And in 1994, when she officially opened the Queen Elizabeth II Botanic Park, which was named in her honor. Mr. Speaker, it is often said that heavy is the head that wears the crown. That may be so, Mr. Speaker, but Her Majesty did so with grace and dignity for over 7 decades. The world will long remember her lifelong dedication and leadership. On behalf of the people of Northside, I extend our condolences to the members of the royal family. We pray for their comfort as well as the people around the world who mourn her passing at this time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May God save the King.
The lady member from Cayman Brac, the member for Cayman Brac East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to offer my most sincere condolences on behalf of my ministry, the Ministry of Education, Lands and District Administration, but in particular on behalf of my constituencies of Cayman Brac East and the Sister Islands in general, on behalf of my colleague and friend from Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman. Mr. Speaker, with your kind permission, I wish to briefly refer to Proverbs 31, commencing verse 10 and thereafter, where the proposition was posed, who can find a virtuous woman? Indeed, her price is far beyond rubies. She looked well at her household, and the bread of idleness she did not eat. Her family rised up and called her blessed, and so did her husband, who lovingly praised her in public. Many daughters have excelled and done well, but she exceeded them all. Mr. Speaker, I believe it's no coincidence that she feared the Lord and made it a strong pillar in the foundation of her road to success, and admirably led the Church of England as its head. Her 70 years, you see, Mr. Speaker, will, I so submit, be talked about for many generations to come, within the gates and outside the gates. The late Queen as has been noted, was the longest serving monarch. And indeed, she was a constant, a friend to many nations and leaders. It is said that she reigned over the time for some 14 United States presidents and met 13 of them. As it related to her own country, she had the privilege and honor to humbly lead some 15 prime ministers, from Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill to the latest, which she carried out her duty admirably with Liz Truss, Prime Minister Liz Truss, just a mere 2 days before her passing from this earth to the celestial realm. Mr. Speaker, in addition, Her Majesty recognized what it was to break the glass ceiling, as it were, as a female leader at a time where she had no immediate role models. But because she anchored her determination in the Lord Jesus Christ, I believe I can safely say that she had a majority, because with him all things are possible, and she exceeded many impossibilities in the sight of mankind. Mr. Speaker, I believe that was her greatest accomplishment. And I was very relieved to hear that now His Majesty King Charles III echo his commitment to protection of the Church of England and the Church generally in his commencement remarks. She was an exemplary ambassador for the country, a formidable force, a bonding force, in particular as it related to the Commonwealth. And Mr. Speaker, I relate to that intimately, having served on the executive of the CPA with the 54 members. I gained a magnificent appreciation for what it meant to have the Queen as the head of the Commonwealth. There were many arguments and many aspiring to move away from the Commonwealth, but she had a way of quietly and diplomatically ensuring that the Commonwealth family came together, and that's exactly what it was. I say that, Mr. Speaker, because I myself see myself as a product of the Commonwealth. That's where I learned the parliamentary parlance, that's where I learned the parliamentary procedure, that's where I gained lifelong friends that we can still call on today across. And I'm privileged today to see one of those friends sitting, and I shan't call her name, but she knows to whom I refer, here today. Isn't that an awesome God who orchestrates our beings? No one knew that this would occur during the tourism conference. And no one knew that we shared the same last name, in fact. Hence, she's not Caymanian. Her possesses Caymanian status. But that is just an example. I have not been to her country yet. It's on my bucket list. But because of what the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth did after 1945 with World War II coming to an end, her father, the late King George, saw the need, appreciated the necessity as the sun began to set on the great United Kingdom, as it were, and countries began to mature, and they sought assiduously, diligently, after gaining independence and becoming republics, that they needed to have that common thread that bound these countries together. And I'm so glad that she did carry on that legacy from King George, because many parliaments have benefited. Many parliaments have actually just aspired to keep within the boundaries of democracy. It has been said, Mr. Speaker, that it's not the utopia of governments, indeed it's not even the perfect government, but certainly is the best form of government this side of heaven. And so, Mr. Speaker, I found a deep appreciation. And one may wonder, you know, how could one person have such an influence? I remember my very first meeting as the first woman minister here in this jurisdiction. I'd walked into the cabinet room, and there was a picture majestically hung on the wall, and there was the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And I just stood, because I hadn't seen a picture like that in my own home. And I admired the way she stood. And you know, Mr. Speaker, perhaps I would reveal public now a secret. I saw how she stood, her hand was this way, her left fingers was this way. And from that day to now, when I stand in public for formal photographs or for formal situation, that is the pose I got. I didn't have a personal one-to-one tutelage from her, but just the way she presented herself as a young politician, That picture still hangs in the cabinet room, and I often am reminded when tempers flare, as they do in the Westminster adversarial system, that you keep your composure, you keep your poise, because the greater good is to leave this country in a better state than we found it. And for that, I publicly wish to thank Her Majesty the late Queen Elizabeth II. Mr. Speaker, I was also indeed extremely privileged to be graced with the honor of being in her presence, speaking with her, shaking her hand on 2 occasions, once here, once United Kingdom. And I thank you for allowing me the privilege, Mr. Speaker, to attend in Her Majesty's mother's funeral in the United Kingdom as a representative of the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, life has its ebbs and flows, and it is most unfortunate that with the passing of the late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, His Majesty King Charles III could not have become king until that had occurred. But as I sat glued these past few days to the television, trying to look and appreciate what was happening, the one thing that impressed me most was that in her protection and preservation of the monarchy, self-aggrandization was not her modus operation, in that she allowed the monarch to be greater than herself, and that the transition, sad though it be, it's a smooth transition of power. If we learn nothing else, Mr. Speaker, I pray that all of us members within the Commonwealth would look at that, replay it in our minds, go back to YouTube, and just see how smooth one of the greatest countries still in the world today was able to take an iconic female leader and grieve and express it with the laying of flowers, with the signing of condolences records, with lining from Balmoral all the way now to London. And even in these 3 little jewels in the Caribbean, her influence was felt. But yet, concurrently, a new mushrooming appreciation is beginning to rise for our new monarch. And so, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my constituents, we wish His Majesty King Charles III God's richest blessing, excellent health, an abundance of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that he may continue to carry the torch of his mother, so that all of his subjects can gleefully and gladly say, "Long live King Charles III." I so submit, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you for your involvement of allowing this House, these honorable members, the opportunity. You somehow seem to have that foresight to be able to do the right thing, the right time. This is one such occasion. So may the record accurately record that this was your brainchild, and I thank you.
The member from East End.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is with a heavy heart that I rise this afternoon to record on behalf of my constituents, the constituents of East End, just how deeply moved and saddened we are at the passing of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of blessed memory. Her late Majesty the Queen deserves all the accolades received this afternoon, and I wish to thank my honorable colleagues who has already spoken for their sentiments. I can truly say with complete admiration, I found them truly touching and inspiring, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was truly shocked and heartbroken when I learned of the passing of the late Majesty the Queen. I was shocked, for it was only back in February that I gave my first Queen's speech address, acknowledging her Platinum Jubilee. I could have never thought or imagined that a few months later, the only person I had ever known as Queen was no longer in this realm. During my Queen's speech address, I reminisced on the 2 visits Her late Majesty and her late husband, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, both of blessed memory, made to our shores. As a young boy in 1983, whilst I do not vividly remember seeing Her Majesty the Queen as she opened the Queen's Highway, I do remember the dramatic improvements the coastal road made for vehicular connectivity between East End and North Side. I can also remember waiting to see Her late Majesty being driven through East End on her tour. Mr. Speaker, we reminisced also on what life was like prior to the opening of the Queen's Highway. Farmers and other landowners had to rely on access via catboats, or walking, or riding donkeys to reach their land. With the introduction of the new highway, farmers could access their land much more easily, and the improved access opened up additional acreage for farming and land for residential use. During the 1994 visit, Her late Majesty and husband also commemorated the 200th anniversary of the wreck of the 10 sails, the fateful event which took place on the evening of February 8th, 1794, as history has it recorded, when a convoy of 10 ships bound for the US and England struck the reefs off East End, and which the residents valiantly set out to rescue as many of the ship's passengers and crew as possible. These are the memories that are shared amongst the people of the District of East End, and which they hold near and dear to their hearts. As we remember Her late Majesty and her 70 years on the throne, we join in offering our prayers and our best wishes to our new sovereign, His Majesty King Charles III, and all the royal family during the time of grief. Mr. Speaker, His Majesty King Charles III also has great ties to our Cayman Islands. Under his previous royal title as Prince of Wales, the then Prince Charles visited in July 1973, acting in the capacity of an officer on board HMS Minerva, and was reported that he was well received by the public. More recently, on the 27th of March 2019, the then Prince Charles and his wife, Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, now the Queen Consort, began a 2-day tour that saw them greet hundreds of Cayman residents across all 3 islands. It was during this tour that Prince Charles visited Cayman Brac, where he opened the swimming pool, as well as attended a reception with the governor and the then Premier of the Cayman Islands, who met with members of their community. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was my distinct pleasure and honor to attend the royal ascension of King Charles III at Government House. I join in offering prayers for a long and healthy reign as we navigate life with the new monarch. All of us in this honorable house grew up only knowing of the Queen, Her late Majesty. We'll miss her as our Queen and mourn her loss for a long time. In her memory, we should all challenge ourselves to model our lives after her.
a life of caring about our community, devotion to family, and one grounded in our faith. May her soul rest in peace and rise in glory. May God bless these Cayman Islands. God save the King.
The Honorable Minister for Health, the member for Prospect.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Thank you for pivoting so quickly and arranging this special sitting of our Parliament. And I rise to join with my colleagues in this honorable House to pay tribute to our much beloved and now departed sovereign, Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and to offer sincere condolences on behalf of my ministry, Health and Wellness, Home Affairs, but also on behalf of the good people of my constituency, Prospect. Mr. Speaker, before I proceed any further, I humbly seek your indulgence and thank my colleagues, the Honourable Member of East End, Kimmenbrack East, and all the others who have spoken before me of their sentiments. And it's just amazing how repetitive it is that we will hear in our individual contributions as we just reminisce and honestly impart the impact that one individual has left on everybody's lives. Mr. Speaker, there are very few persons who have in life and in death been able to cause the entire world to stop and take notice. As we mourn the loss of Her late Majesty the Queen, we can agree that she was one of those special few individuals God blessed us with. Her legacy spans many pivotal shifts in how the world operated. She ruled through wars, through civil and political unrests, through economic prosperity and times of poverty. She ruled through the rise of terrorism, epidemics, and pandemics. She was indeed a queen of all ages, who was unafraid of changing tides, but instead kept the same stubborn poise and grace throughout her reign. Mr. Speaker, she was a leader whose dedication, values, and character transcended the rules of time. I think tenderly of His Majesty King Charles III and the entire royal family at this time as they brave the media storm while battling their own grief. To us, she was queen. To them, a loving mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. They're human, just like you and I pray that they cling to the special memories that only they possess at this time of a woman who cherished them dearly, even when the world demanded she shift her attention. As I said during our Platinum Jubilee celebrations earlier this year, on this very same floor, by which it seems only like yesterday, I am greatly inspired by the life of our dear Queen Elizabeth II, as a leader, as a mother, as a wife, and as a person with great allegiance to her country and its people. Her impact has shaped many women like myself who challenge the status quo for those who cannot speak for themselves. As I recall, being the tender age of 8 in 1983. And 1994, the age of 20. You can work out my age. But I do have fond memories of both of those visits to her shores. At age 8, in my primary school uniform, and practicing at school in the event you had that one-on-one personal interaction, how to curtsy. I can remember making sure I was in tip-top shape. And in 1994, I joined the scores of people as we prepared our jurisdiction. I can recall the fresh smelling of paint and watching all the pomp and preparation being made just along Shedden Road. There was even debates, what roads, but the pride that we took awaiting her arrival will resonate with me for the rest of my life. As the Cayman Islands join in the Commonwealth during these somber days, Mr. Speaker, to recognize a sovereign's contribution to her development as states during her ruling, we cannot take inventory of her achievements without noticing her advocacy for each of our territories. We will continue to support the Crown as His Royal Majesty the King navigates his personal grief and his sovereign duty simultaneously. I convey to His Majesty King Charles III the words of Tagore. I quote, "Say not in grief that she is gone no more, but say in thankfulness that she was. Death is not the extinguishing of a light, but putting out of the lamp, because the dawn has now come." End quote. This is a bittersweet time for His Royal Majesty, the King, as he embarks and embraces his new role. May he lead with the same dignity, poise, and grace as his mother built on the strong foundation and principles of her tenure. I am honored to have borne witness of Her late Majesty's work in my lifetime, and while she now takes well-deserved rest, she will certainly not be forgotten. She was a lady of humility. She was humble and wise. She brought so much confidence to the institution, but mostly she ruled honorably and dignifiedly, giving a lifetime of service as she vowed from the very onset of her reign. On behalf of the good people of the Prospect constituency, may she rest in peace, and God save the King.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay my respects to the passing of Her Majesty, the late Queen Elizabeth II. I do this with a heavy and grateful heart, not only on behalf of myself, but on behalf of my family and my constituents of Georgetown South. In remembering Her Majesty, I am struck not only by her long years of service to the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and the overseas territories, her unwavering commitment and duty to her country, but also her ability to change and adapt over a reign that lasted for 70 years. Her Majesty served not only as our sovereign, Mr. Speaker, but as the role model in which all persons who are in service to people and country should aspire. The life of Her Majesty reminds us of the responsibility which comes with a promise of service made to others. Her life and works reflecting the vow which she has taken, or she had taken, with grace and dignity in every way. Mr. Speaker, I am and will always be in awe of Her Majesty's accomplishments, which include, but are certainly not limited to, her service in World War II, the calm, steady approach she brought during turbulent national periods, her key and crucial role in the Commonwealth, her role in the modernization of the monarchy, her tireless charity work over the course of her reign, raising over 1.5 billion for over 500 different charities, her support of racial justice in the Commonwealth, and what may be her greatest accomplishment in being the longest reigning monarch in British history. She served as a pillar of experience and strength to 15 British prime ministers, from Winston Churchill, the minister to whom she often gave credit for her political education, to the now current Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Mr. Speaker, I thank Her Majesty for the lasting imprint she left on these islands, coming twice during her long reign to open our sports facilities, parks, highways, and our special Pines retirement home with great pride, but also by touching the Cayman Islands people as she accepted their bouquets, shook their hands, listened to their stories, and in doing so, forever had their hearts. Mr. Speaker, I will always carry with me the example that Her Majesty set as a woman, as a person in service to others, and as a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. Her Majesty led a life of service, and she was a humanitarian. So much of her example is needed in the world today. She was respected and loved all over the world. I will always hold close to me her words, and this has been said many times throughout the tributes delivered here this afternoon, and I quote, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong," unquote. It was a promise that she kept over more than 70 years. Mr. Speaker, let Her Majesty's life encourage us to emulate her compassion and commitment at every opportunity. Her legacy will live on forever. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of myself, my family, and my constituents, I wish to express heartfelt condolences to the royal family at this very, very sad and difficult time. May God bless the late Queen Elizabeth II. May God bless these Cayman Islands. And I wish His Majesty Charles III a long and successful reign. God save the King.
Member for West Bay Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with deep sorrow that I rise today to pay tribute to Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on behalf of the people of West Bay Central. This special sitting today is very special as we, the members of Parliament of the Cayman Islands, are able to pay tribute and also offer condolences to our new sovereign, King Charles III. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for making these arrangements. While learning of her passing, I was shaken and even a bit shocked, as it was only a few days prior to her death that we watched her receive her new Prime Minister, Ms. Liz Truss. This was, to me, such a powerful statement of true leadership. Our late Queen passed only after she'd received her new Prime Minister. It is beyond question that she served us with dignity and grace, with her calming spirit, and she served right until the very end. She reigned, as many members have said today, with humility, despite her significant achievements and recognition. Her late Majesty was the symbolism of what leading with grace and integrity represents. Because she became a queen at such a young age, and the world knew very little about her personality and views before her accession, and she continued to reveal very little thereafter. She never uttered a controversial opinion in public, though supporters and critics would differ over whether it was simply because she had no opinion or whether she was a master of political neutrality. She once said, and I quote, "Of course, in this existence, the job and the life go together. You really can't divide it up," end quote. To some extent, the person and the position were one and the same, yet not entirely. She kept much back. Though the masses caught an occasional glimpse of the private woman, she remained largely an enigma, and will do so until the diaries, which in royal traditions she wrote daily, are made public. Mr. Speaker, while attending the gun salute, I thought about those 70 years of service and what it must have been like for her. From all indications, she was a committed wife, a loving mother, a caring grandmother, and a passionate great-grandmother. And certainly, she was a royal and incomparable head of state. To us as an overseas territory, she is our queen, but to the world, she is the queen, and her death has created an emptiness in this world. Her character was beyond reproach, and the high standards she has set is worthy to emulate. Her desirable characteristics translated into her shaping what the monarchy is and how it is perceived today. The attributes and traits she possessed made her the anchor of the monarchy. Her values and principles should be the roadmap and guide for all of us to follow. Not to mention her loyalty to service and the respect she showed to all is most admirable. Our late queen exhibited passion and was the essence of love and symbolized care for all human beings throughout her service. She has transcended time and made a significant and profound impact over the span of her reign. This is why she was revered internationally, and she had the interest of all humans in all parts of the globe at heart. She was undeniably affectionate, as her love was felt deeply and widespread. Her late Majesty was an extraordinary queen who had a keen sense of duty and responsibility. She was the heart of the United Kingdom and the wider Commonwealth community. As a member of this honorable House, representing the constituency of West Bay Central and the wider Cayman Islands, I solemnly share in expressing sincere condolences to our new monarch, King Charles III, and the royal family members, and by extension, all the peoples of the United Kingdom. We thank Almighty God for granting our Queen a long life. Eternal rest grant unto her, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon her. God save the King.
The member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is with a heavy heart I rise to convey our most profound condolences on the passing of our late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. On behalf of the Commonwealth of the Cayman Islands, and more intimately, the Savannah community of my constituents, my family, and friends. Mr. Speaker, last week, September the 8th, what began as a normal Thursday came abruptly to a halt for the world as an outpouring of prayers began for our beloved Queen. Having learned she suffered from an illness setback. Because we watched her for most of our lives, I'm sure many of us expected that she would rally through with unwavering strength and make a speedy recovery. Prayers continued throughout the day, but sadly, by the close of the day, Her late Majesty passed away peacefully to join her beloved prince. At that moment, the impact of devastation and grief was the same for many of us as losing one of our family members. Mr. Speaker, the sudden death of Her late Majesty reminds us that life is short and that we must devote our moments of cherishing and spending time with those we love and focus on things we view as the most important. It is our purpose. I am sure we will continue to spend the remainder of our days with the Queen, ever present in the hearts and in our hearts and minds. Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, embodied the noblest values of society and was truly a foundation stone for the monarchy. She was the epitome of distinguished leadership, offering precise insight, wisdom, grace, and humility, all with unyielding devotion to her undertakings, and as she promised, serving until the very end. Mr. Speaker, and she did. During difficult times in this rapidly changing world, she always reminded us of the encouragement and to stand firm and tall as we press forward to run the good race. She was a godly woman who remained grounded in her faith. She was admired by all and loved the world over. As we continue to see her portraits displayed throughout the world, her presence will resonate and her spirit guide us forever. And now, Mr. Speaker, as her son, His Majesty, King Charles III, steps into his role, his purpose, may he trust in the one living God and God alone to lead and direct as the monarchy moves forward, and make the Queen's legacy and memory be an everlasting blessing to us all. God save the King. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for West Bay South, the Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to record brief tribute to Her late Majesty, the Queen of blessed memory, on behalf of West Bay South and on behalf of the ministries for which I have responsibility. I rise, Mr. Speaker, with equal measure of sadness on one hand and inspiration on the other hand. Sadness, Mr. Speaker, which I see firsthand, that's felt locally, but also had an opportunity to see felt internationally. For example, Mr. Speaker, you and I were both in attendance at John Gray Memorial Church service yesterday, in which part of the service was to observe 1 minute of silence for Her late Majesty. And part of the service in which I was invited to read the first set of scripture. But before doing so, I thanked the church for Reverend Myers and the church for that moment of silence. And before reading the scripture, I could look across the faces of the congregation and see genuine sadness, genuine feelings of being torn at this seismic event. But also, Mr. Speaker, I was able to see similar reactions internationally. As you're aware, Mr. Speaker, I had the honor last week to lead a delegation of about a dozen public servants to Nicaragua to update the Financial Action Task Force on our progress on anti-money laundering. And our meeting with the FATF Joint Group just happened to be on Thursday. And it was at 2 o'clock. So prior to lunch, we were in deep preparations as a team before going into that meeting. And around midday, everyone's phones got the same flash that Her Majesty had passed. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've all been part of meetings with these devices where news flashes, there's a momentary pause, we all look at each other for a second and say, oh, well, that's a shame. But then proceedings move on. And we don't mean to be disrespectful, but it doesn't have the same magnitude. But in these proceedings, we could not continue to work. Here we are in intense preparation and focus, and everyone had to stop. Everyone felt that they had to at least message one other person to say, have you heard this? Everyone felt that they had to say a few words. It's one of those events, Mr. Speaker, that I think you'll go back in history and say, where were you when this happened? That's how large, that's how enormous it was. And after a few moments, we were able to gather ourselves, transported to the meeting with the FATF. But even then, after collecting ourselves, we were reminded again, because before the proceeding started with the FATF, the joint chairs of the meeting each looked at me as minister and said, on behalf of all of this regional group, we want to convey condolences through you, minister, to the Cayman Islands and onward to the UK on this morning's development. And every one of the countries in attendance that are there to examine us, each bowed their head. That showed me all the evidence I needed to see of the impact and the respect of our late Majesty. Now, Mr. Speaker, why I also say, on the other hand, it's inspiration. Because what that did is, even though it was sad, it stiffened our resolve to convey our points on our progress passionately, persuasively, but with Her Majesty's dignity. That, I think, Mr. Speaker, is her legacy. And I hope and I pray we did Her late Majesty proud in the way we as a team conducted ourselves to honor her on that day. Mr. Speaker, I also think it's fitting to say, as other members have, a few brief words of encouragement to our new king, King Charles III. Mr. Speaker, as fate would have it, I'm in the middle of a book about the former US President Harry Truman, in which he had to follow large shoes and the passing of the four-term Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And as he tells it, arrived to pay his first initial respects on the passing and or offer words of comfort to Miss Eleanor Roosevelt. He said, "Is there anything that I could do for you?" Miss Eleanor, apparently without missing a beat, said, "No, Mr. President, is there anything I could do for you? Because you're the one who's in trouble now." So if that is the impact and the weight that is going to be on the successor's shoulders after 4 terms of a US presidency, imagine the weight that'll be on the shoulders of a new monarch of an entire commonwealth. So we pray, dear Lord, to grant King Charles III wisdom and poise and the same level of dignity and public service that his mother exuded. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of West Bay South, on behalf of the ministries I have responsibility for, and honoring all of what has been said today by all members and you, Mr. Speaker, for making these arrangements, may Her late Majesty the Queen of blessed memory rest in peace, and God save the King.
A member for Bordentown East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my remarks on behalf of the people of Bordentown, and in particular, Mr. Speaker, Bordentown East, the largest constituent and first capital. I also would like to welcome our guests from overseas who have since departed the halls. As we honor, Mr. Speaker, the life of the Queen, and in my honorable opinion, she was the beacon of the world, and as we see the whole world is mourning. One of my personal desires, Mr. Speaker, and especially as an elected member of Parliament, was to meet the Queen. She reminded me, like many have said before, like my grandmother. I can only imagine the sadness of the monarch, King Charles III, Prince William, Prince Harry, and the deep bond they held. I offer my sincere condolences to all the royal family. I say to them, Psalms 34:18, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II visited the Cayman Islands twice, and with all the anticipation, fanfare, and excitement, we can wholeheartedly say the Cayman Islands love their Queen. Our official national anthem, first performed in London in September 1745, coincidentally to a pretender to the British throne, Prince Charles Edward Stuart, and the actual words stayed true 277 years later to her 96-year-old Her Majesty the Queen, long live our noble Queen, and long reign over us. And that she did. The Queen dedicated her life to many initiatives throughout her long life. But the most important to me was her dedication in her personal faith in God, and made no secret of her reliance on the Bible and the quiet strength behind the crown as the primary source for her faith in Christ. She carried out her duties with poise and grace, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I may add that the average global population of the world in 2019, 26% of the world were younger than 14, 8% were older than 65, while half of the world's working population is in the bracket of 25 to 65 years old. So it's safe to say that more than 50% of the world knows no other queen or king than Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. I was fortunate enough, Mr. Speaker, to have met then Prince Charles, now King Charles, a few years ago in 2019, as I gave speech as the Minister of Environment at the Queen's Botanical Park in Northside. And after I spoke, Prince Charles and I at the time, we spoke at length as he was interested in what we were doing here in Cayman as Minister of Environment. And he was very interested in, and particularly about my initiative, or the ministry's initiative, in increasing the marine parks. And I watch intently his interaction and love for our precious blue iguana. My children, Tahiti and Dior, also shook his hand at that event. Mr. Speaker, it has long been acknowledged by political leaders and commentators all over the world that the Queen handled her often difficult and delicate constitutional role with grace and remarkable, even formidable political skill. Her wisdom and unceasing sense of duty meant she was widely viewed with a combination of respect, esteem, awe, and affection which transcended nations, classes, and generations. She was proud of Britain and its people, but yet, in the end, Mr. Speaker, she belonged to the world, and the world will mourn her. And how can we forget, Mr. Speaker, that she was an experienced car mechanic with the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the Women's Army Service, meant that she could legitimately claim to have participated in what has been called the People's War. This experience gave her a more naturally common touch than any other of her predecessors had displayed. The world's queen indeed, Mr. Speaker. The people mourn the loss. May her soul rest in peace. Long live our King. We wish you success in your reign. God bless.
The Honorable Deputy Governor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It is with a heavy heart that I rise this afternoon
to record on behalf of the civil service and the wider public service. I think I'm okay. Just how deeply moved and saddened we are at the passing of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Our much-loved Queen deserves all the accolades received this afternoon, and I wish to thank my honorable colleague from Bordentown East for his eloquent speech. It is on behalf of all of us in the Cayman Islands Public Service that I express my deepest condolences to the royal family and to the government and people of the United Kingdom on the passing of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. The Cayman Islands Public Service has been steadfast in carrying out our charge of being on Her Majesty's service, and throughout her reign, we have maintained an abiding respect and sincere affection for the monarch. Mr. Speaker, Her late Majesty set the standard for public service and love for country. Her sense of duty, her good humor, her ability for reconciliation and compassion is unmatched. She was the best of us. Mr. Speaker, her commitment to duty was such that we believed that it would never come to an end. She was a remarkable monarch. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, during the height of the COVID-19 crisis, I often wondered whether we would overcome the crisis. Mr. Speaker, it was the words of Her late Majesty that gave me comfort and helped inspire me. Mr. Speaker, she said, "Coronavirus will not overcome us. As dark as death can be, particularly to those suffering from grief, light and life are greater." Mr. Speaker, light does overcome darkness. And Mr. Speaker, Her late Majesty was correct. The Cayman Islands and the world overcame the darkness of COVID-19. And today we live in a bright light, although that light has been dulled by her passing. Mr. Speaker, while I did not have the high honor of meeting Her late Majesty, I have met King Charles III when he visited our beloved islands with his loving wife, the Queen Consort, in 2019. Mr. Speaker, I was struck by his sense of duty and his love and care for the environment. Mr. Speaker, on the occasion of the swearing in of the new Parliament early last year, members of this honorable House took an oath to bear true allegiance to Her Majesty. Mr. Speaker, we could never have envisaged that today we would have a new oath of allegiance. Mr. Speaker, in closing, allow me to read our new oath. I, Franz Manderson, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty, King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. Mr. Speaker, may Her late Majesty rest in peace. God save the King.
The Honorable the Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to all honorable members who have gone before and have spoken so eloquently, understandably, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is with a deep sense of sadness that I pay this tribute to Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Sir, as realists, really, we all know the inevitability of death. But for some of us, myself included, we somehow wish for a different outcome in this case. Her Majesty was a quintessential monarch embodying a life of quiet dignity, civility, grace, and commitment to public service. For many, she personified stability and continuity. She was, Mr. Speaker, an exemplary leader of the Commonwealth, who through the years has evolved into one of the world's most consequential leaders. She was the kind of leader that epitomizes great strength and character, especially, Mr. Speaker, in times of great adversity. Mr. Speaker, the enormity of her reign is best contextualized when it is considered that, as reported, more than 80% of the UK's current population live their lives with Her Majesty as the Queen. No doubt, sir, this puts in focus the remarkableness of the institutional nature of her reign. And Mr. Speaker, her death, her passing has impacted us directly, as it has impacted the rest of the world. But in large and in small ways, Mr. Speaker, you heard others spoke about some of the changes. But some of these changes will include, for example, the oath that has just been taken by the Honorable Deputy Governor, or envelopes, Mr. Speaker, or stationaries. The prayers, Mr. Speaker, that we say in this Parliament, the title carried by some public office holders, among others. Things, Mr. Speaker, that we have all grown accustomed to and took for granted over the decades, all now be changed. And so, Mr. Speaker, we need not look far to understand the longevity of her reign. Mr. Speaker, Her late Majesty always had that ability to connect and understand people's circumstances. She at all times goes about her role with a sense of purpose and quiet dignity. It should come therefore as no surprise that the late Her Majesty, the Queen, was so well loved and admired worldwide. As evidence, Mr. Speaker, this became clear because of the overwhelming global outpouring of grief and sorrow at her passing. Mr. Speaker, I had the good fortune, indeed the great privilege of meeting and speaking with Her late Majesty during the celebration of the 800th anniversary of the sealing of Magna Carta on the 23rd of February 2015 at a reception hosted by her at Buckingham Palace. I was struck by her warmth and sincerity and the earnestness, Mr. Speaker, with which she asked me about the welfare of the Cayman Islands and its people. Indeed, sir, no one will deny that Her late Majesty was a model public servant, greatly admired for her deep and abiding faith, her quiet dignity, and dignified composure, even amidst the most unsettling of events. She was always stoic and was a calming voice. May her soul rest in peace and her memory live on in our hearts. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I offer my deepest condolences to the royal family as I pay my respect to the new king, King Charles III. God save the king.
The Honorable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I'm to move a motion to send the messages which have been so eloquently articulated here this afternoon to His Majesty, the King Charles III. But Mr. Speaker, before doing so, I would like to join in thanking the Governor, yourself, and all colleagues, Mr. Speaker, for the very poignant and heartfelt tributes and reflections that have been expressed here this afternoon. All, Mr. Speaker, have been very fitting, very positive, and certainly one could never be accused of exaggeration. Mr. Speaker, we've heard people talk about their experiences and the times in which Her late Majesty visited the Cayman Islands and where they were and what they did. We've heard the member from West Bay South express the circumstances in which he found himself at the time of her passing, and the fact that so many representatives of countries asked him to pass on their condolences through him to the Cayman Islands in particular. Mr. Speaker, we've had the member from Red Bay, if I may be able to refer to him by his title and name, Sir Alden, certainly in the blink of an eye, went from his title of QC to being KC. All of these things, Mr. Speaker, happened very quickly, and we have certainly had the positive expressions made here this afternoon, and I think all have done an excellent job in representing their own personal views, the views of the people of the country, and in particular, the views of their own constituents, the constituents that they each represent. And I'm particularly proud of the way they have done so, sir. Mr. Speaker, thank you again for organizing this meeting. As has been noted, it was certainly a great opportunity, and one which I know you pushed and you cajoled until it happened. So thank you for that, and given the circumstances, it has worked out very well, and it was very nice of us to be able to have our visiting guests. Mr. Speaker, with that being said, I move a motion as follows: be it resolved that this Honorable House do herewith agree to send the gracious messages from the members of the Cayman Islands Parliament as recorded this 12th day of September 2022 to His Majesty King Charles III.
Before taking the motion, let me say too, I thank you all for your contributions so eloquently given, the genuineness and sincerity with which I feel they have been given, and especially you being here in a sense of duty and respect. I do also want to thank the Cabinet Office and the protocol officers for doing such an outstanding job at such a short notice. I do thank His Excellency the Governor for his organization of the state events under his remit. I do want to also thank Pastor Gary Haylock for his prayers. The question then is, be it resolved that this Honorable House do herewith agree to send a gracious message from the members of the Cayman Islands Parliament as recorded this 12th day of September 2022 to His Majesty King Charles III. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, the ayes have it. The motion is carried. The adjournment. Honorable Premier.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. And with all that being said, it is only left for me to move the adjournment of this Honorable House. Sine die.
Question is that this Honorable House do now adjourn sine die. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. This Honorable House stands adjourned sine die.
Well, today was incredibly emotional for King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla in Scotland. His sons and their wives stunned crowds, reuniting at Windsor for the first time in 2.5 years. It's been reported that while Harry and William were both at Balmoral, they ate dinner separately, didn't interact, and Harry left for Windsor early the next morning. So what brought them together on Saturday? A text. A source tells ET that the Prince of Wales thought it was an important show of unity at an incredibly difficult time for the family. As for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, we're told they plan to remain in the UK for now. There's no word on whether Archie and Lilibet will attend the Queen's funeral. That's been officially set for next Monday, the 19th. We're told that while Harry is still unable to wear his military uniform to any event, his uncle Prince Andrew is allowed to be in uniform for the final vigil only. And this was sweet. Her Majesty also famously adored Paddington Bear and his marmalade sandwiches. Well, it seems so many fans began leaving these items in tribute among the flowers that the government has now actually requested they stop the practice, quote, in the interests of sustainability.
Beep disinfectant spray is certified by a US EPA compliant lab to kill the coronavirus.